Speakers instead of the screen. The sound. That's the subject for our man in Hollywood, Jim Brown.
Shuttle Tidarium transmits the clearance code for shield passage.
It's hard to remember before George Lucas turned space into a cliche.
What's up, Wes? 3 from above. Red 3, red 2, pull in. Got it. 3 is coming in, 20 degrees. Cut to the left, I'll take the leader.
Return of the Jedi is crammed with our expectations. Action, aliens, adventure. While Lucas likes to keep his plots a secret, he doesn't mind sharing technical expertise. And since the release of Star Wars in 1977, his documentaries have explained away a lot of illusions. We've become pretty sophisticated when it comes to blue screens, matte paintings, and miniatures, but for the most part, sound still remains a mystery. Go for help, go!
Wait, come on.
What we know is the music. In the case of the Star Wars saga, Oscar-winning composer John Williams, also the conductor of the Boston Pops. His music often gives the films the emotional impact Lucas shortchanges. For Return of the Jedi, the notes flowed. Williams covered almost the entire movie with music.
These space films are symphonic in scale, and they require sometimes 90 minutes or even more. In the case of Jedi, I think there's nearly 2 hours of music in the film. The orchestra accompanies almost all of the film. It's rather like a cartoon in that you may not be aware of it all the time, but music is accompanying most of the gestures and most of the action all the time. In the case of Star Wars, the music is so romantic and grandiose, you know, in a symphonic sense, that it adds a kind of breadth and a kind of beauty to the film. We hope, if it's well done, that it wouldn't have without that. And also, I think, very important, the tempo. When things are happening quickly and when they're accelerating and so on, the music gets quicker and maybe larger and bigger and swells up and in dynamics and so on. And it gives a grandeur.
But no matter how effective a musical score may be, it's only a fraction of the story. The rest is sound effects. For Return of the Jedi, almost 80% of the movie's sound, including dialogue, was created after production wrapped by sound designer Ben Burtt, a young man who already has 3 Oscars to his credit. 1 for Star Wars, another for Raiders of the Lost Ark, and a 3rd for E.T. Burtt heads up the Lucas sound division, known as Sprockets.
Of course, we had done 2 other Star Wars films prior to this, and we had built up a library of spaceship sounds and laser gun sounds and certain types of things which were well established in the first 2 films. On the first film, we had about 200 different recording projects. That is, a project might be, let's create the sound for one particular vehicle, an X-Wing fighter. On Empire, there were just under 1,000 recording projects. And on Jedi, I've lost count. We actually have more tapes in the library now, just as a result of this film, than the other 2. And we had an enormous number of alien vocalizations and voices to create for this film.
Goodness gracious me.
In The Return of the Jedi, Burt's effects are everywhere. Most dramatically, in a chase sequence between the rebels and the Empire that illustrates how it's all done.
The first problem that comes to mind is you want to say, well, what will emotionally affect the audience the most intensely? You want to relate these sounds to something that's familiar to them in everyday life. So that you want a little bit of jet plane in there, perhaps. You may want a little bit of racing car, because you want to bring out the sense of speed, the sense of danger, the sense that the air is whizzing by people's faces. For instance, the pass-bys of these flying units, this kind of material here, it's basically a combination of World War II fighter aircraft. Now, when the guys shift gears, you hear a funny sort of clanging sound as they shift gears. I was in England during the filming of the picture, and I was at my desk in the office, and I heard a funny sound outside, just an unusual sort of musical sort of sound, a little bit like a laser gun. And I said, what's that? And I looked out, and there was a guy out in the street with an air hammer, and it had jammed, and it had a strange kind of a sound. We also went out and we took a lot of metal debris, old cans and boxes and pieces of wood, and threw them up in the air, and they came down through tree branches, breaking the branches as they went and sort of bouncing about. And that gave a kind of snapping and crackling sensation.
When it's all put together, the result is seamless and exhilarating. Tomorrow, Harrison Ford says goodbye to Han Solo. For today, Jim Brown, NBC News, Hollywood.
I like the sounds. Only a guy who's in the business would say he heard something outside. It sounded like a laser.